from two players that had memorable weekends to another player who also had a successful weekend. And we'll start the show with a look back at events in Prague, where Peter Wright became only the third 8-time European Tour winner, a first ranking title of the season for him, beating Dave Chisnall 8-6 in the final with the Czech Darts Open on Sunday night. But for Peter Wright, how timely was this title win for him?
Well, I mean, I don't think words can describe just how timely it was, because we've been talking so much about Peter Wright this year. Obviously there's been players we've been talking a lot about. We've been talking about Michael van Gerwen, Michael Smith, Gerwen Price, even Dave Chisnall, but that's because they've been winning titles. They've been playing at the top of their game and lifting each other. Peter Wright, on the other hand, has not. And we've been talking about just how poor of a start it was for him this year. Yes, he won that World Series event, but beyond that, he barely got in a lick. He went nearly half the Premier League season without winning a match. He was going out first match on the Euro Tour as often as he was not. And when he was not going out first match, he wasn't getting much further, going out Sunday afternoon on the other occasions. He had been, well, he was probably going to make the European Championships just because winning one match a few times would be £4,000 each. It was going to be enough as a seed for the first 10 to at least get him to the European Championships. Before this, it was looking like he'd get there as, maybe the 20th seed, somewhere in that vicinity. If he was able to get one good run, maybe he can get back to the top 16. Well, he won the title. Now he's provisionally the 9th seed for the European Championships. He's done a world of help, given himself a world of help to make sure that he stays in the seats for the remaining European Tour events, stays up in the Pro Tour rankings, and probably also getting himself into the Grand Slam of darts with that win. He would have needed to make a televised final outside of the World Series in order to do that. Eurotour doesn't guarantee it, but it gives him a pretty darn good chance. The only Eurotour winner ahead of him right now would be Dave Chisnall, but that's because he's won 2 to Peter Wright's 1. So for Wright, it was huge for so many practical reasons like that, but just the mental state of it, I think, is a big thing as well. It was just last week where we were talking, is Michael van Gerwen going to be the next number one? And I said, Peter Wright has every chance on paper. If he wins the world match play, he probably goes to world number 1 after Blackpool. But that didn't seem likely. I said, could he find his game out of nowhere? He's done it before, and he could go and win something, but it just seemed less and less likely. Peter Wright has had 9 lives already. How many more does he have? Okay, granted, he's a snake, not a cat, so who knows? But either way, it seemed unlikely, but Peter Wright had done it before, and now he's done it this time. And it wasn't just that he won the title. After that first match, maybe he didn't look the best player, but he looked pretty darn good. He looked as close to his number 3, now number 2 ranking as he had looked all year, and probably for the last 12 months, because he wasn't playing great for most of last year. I did mention at the end of last year, it was looking like he was getting into his game until his wife was in hospital, but he never looked like the world number 1 that at times he was last year. He didn't this weekend. We can't say he looked like the world number 1 in Prague, but he didn't look too many levels off of it. And considering for much of this year, he didn't look like a top 64 player at times, that was a hugely needed run for him. And I don't know what more to say. Let's see how he kicks on from here. Let's see if he duplicates that. There's still 2 more European Tour events before the World Match Play. There's still a handful of Players' Championship events before the World Match Play. And the World Match Play might not be the World Championships, but it is the second biggest event on the calendar, at least on the ranking calendar. And to have a big run there will do him wonders, because he still has a lot of money to defend on the back end of this year. The World Championships, the Players' Championship final from 2 years ago when he beat Ryan Searle in a last leg decider. It's a huge year for him because he didn't have a big year last year, and he had a ginormous one 24 months ago. This will put him in that position mentally to start defending some of that. And you know what? 2 years ago, he was in a similar situation. And what did he do? He defended £500,000 at the World Championships. He has a lot of work to do over the next 7 months to get to that level again, to get him in that position to try to defend the World Championship money, to defend the Players' Championship finals money, to defend everything that he needs to just stay in the top 10 of the world, let alone to stay in the top 2. But this will at least give him that mental confidence that he still can do it, at least for one weekend. He beat almost all the best players in the world in a tournament. Yes, Michael Smith wasn't there, Gerwyn Price wasn't there, but the way he was playing, he might have won it anyway. And for Peter Wright, that is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah, it definitely was a very timely win for Peter Wright, and you could see on stage after the final had finished and he'd won the title, he was holding back the tears, and he's usually not one to hold back on his emotions on stage. I think back to some of his biggest wins in his career, the first World Championship, the UK Open, wins like that where he's struggled to hold it back, but there might have been a few tears after once the cameras had stopped rolling, because as you say, it's not been the best of times for Peter Wright in recent months. He's bottom of the Premier League going into the final week of the league phase this week, and more often than not, he has been losing first game each week. And it has been a little bit surprising to see that, given how he started 2023 and just going a little bit further back last year, ended in disappointment going out early at Ali Pali. That was his defensive world title number 2, ending to Kim Huybrechts in a pretty flat performance very early on in the tournament. But coming into this year, he looked to have turned the tide early on, winning that World Series event that you mentioned in Denmark and beating some of the names that he didn't manage to beat at the weekend, but Michael van Gerwen, Michael Smith, Gerwyn Price, all on the final day. And then the Masters a week or so later had a decent run there, got to the semi-finals. And I think he had match darts to win that one against Rob Cross as well. So wasn't far off winning another one of those big TV titles. But off the hockey, Peter's spoken about the health problems that his wife Jo's been going through. And if you haven't already, do go and watch. I had a watch of it the other day, the PDC's latest episode of their Premier League documentary series on YouTube, and it focuses on Peter. They take the cameras to his home and talk to him and Jo as well. So it is understandable that darts hasn't been at the forefront of his mind in recent months, but when you look at the state of his game as well in more recent times, the changing of the darts, something that we are used to now with Peter, but it seems to have taken on a whole nother level. I think back to the UK Open that weekend, and he was tinkering with his darts more often than I think I can remember. And we've even got a dedicated Twitter page now. What darts is Peter Wright using now? At Peter Wright Dart, if you want to follow along with that. But for almost all of this past weekend, he was throwing with I want to call them the gold darts that has brought so much success for him in the past. And if you ask a lot of darts fans, they'll say that is the setup that Peter Wright should be using all the time. But it's not up to us or them. It's up to Peter. And he did survive that scare on the Saturday, 5-3 down to Brendan Dolan in the first game, won the last 3 legs to sneak through that one. But the final day, you look at the averages, you look at the performances, 101, 97, 104, 95, and to beat the calibre of players that he beat, 4 players, is still in that top 16, all proven winners, either on the Euro Tour stage or other stages. It's been a good weekend for Peter Wright, and he should take a great deal of confidence. But as you mentioned there with the rankings, it's been a good weekend, but there's a lot more work to be done for Peter Wright during the second half of this year with that prize money that he is going to be defending, and he is going to have to show the form that he's shown at the weekend, if not better, I think, to defend a large chunk of that and back up to number 2 now, as you say, above Michael van Gerwen. But he's going to need to show more of it now if he is going to avoid that drop down the rankings later on this year.